The Alabama Crimson Tide, that's right, guys, are number 13 in the college football playoff after losing 24-3 on the road to Oklahoma. What the H? How could they do that? I don't have the board, so I'm just saying what the H. What the H brought to you by Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com, Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED for 10% off. So a lot of people were upset over the weekend when Alabama, as a 3-loss team, came in ranked number 13, the highest ranked 3-loss team in the college football playoff right now. Many people were very upset about it. I understand why. I get it. You think there's some Alabama favoritism on that. Alabama now, to get to the college football playoff, just needs a couple of losses in front of them. They just need a couple of upsets from some of the 2-loss teams, by the way, if Texas loses there. So let's break this down. There are 3 2-loss teams ahead of Alabama: Georgia, Tennessee, and Clemson. Alabama's clearest path to the playoff is for Clemson to lose to South Carolina and Tennessee to lose to Vanderbilt. Now, they could hope for Georgia to lose to Georgia Tech. That is true. But even still, Georgia would go play in the SEC title game, and if they win that, they're getting an auto bid anyway. So Alabama's best hope is for Tennessee to lose and Clemson to lose. South Carolina, though, if they beat Clemson, is down at number 15, while Alabama's number 13, and they might make the case that they belong over Alabama, and they would have a case if Alabama loses to Auburn. But I do think with both teams 8-3, Alabama has the head-to-head advantage. They would get in over South Carolina. So is the outrage about Alabama still being so close to the college football playoff ranking justified? And I know we got a lot of Tennessee fans that follow us. I get the hate of Alabama. I think in many cases they may have gotten some unfair treatment in the past. But guys, the outrage is not justified. I'm sorry. It's not. Alabama belongs at number 13. And I can actually point to the data to prove that they belong at number 13. So let's just do strength of schedule power rating real quick. If you did that based on the team ranking standards, based on that formula, you could make the case that South Carolina is close at number 7, but Alabama's all the way up at number 2, and they beat South Carolina. So let's keep going. They're number 2. Only ahead of them is Georgia. Okay, that's strength of schedule power rating. Season strength of schedule power rating at this point, which is takes the resume and doesn't take recency bias, still has Alabama at number 2. These are teamrankings.com. You can pull them up, guys. Strength of schedule power rating basic method, which just uses the formula of the winning percentage of your opponents and all that. Alabama's at number 7. The ESPN FPI strength of schedule, which bases it on the FPI of other teams, which is based on how you play and how you win and who you beat and everything like that. Alabama's at number 11. In every one of these situations, guys, Alabama has the highest ranked strength of schedule of any 3-loss team. The only one approaching them is South Carolina. Now, you may say, okay, well, what about the 2-loss teams in other conferences? Well, if you're a Tennessee fan, you're going to be one of the first people screaming that the SEC is uniquely tougher than other conferences. And I wouldn't deny that. And it's not like Alabama is ahead of any 2-loss Big Ten team. They're just ahead of 2-loss Big 12, Group of 5, and ACC teams. So let's break down those teams that they're ahead of that have fewer losses in them. The first one, Arizona State at 9-2. Well, Arizona State's got an automatic bid anyway, so Alabama wouldn't take a bid away from Arizona State. So they can't complain. Both teams will play on the road anyway, so I don't think that's really a big deal. Going past Arizona State, BYU. BYU has the 40th ranked strength of schedule based on the FPI alone. Within the team rankings, they're in the 30 to 40 range, whereas Alabama's in the top 5. I'm sorry, but Alabama does have a significantly better strength of schedule than BYU. Now, you can make the case for that, but again, Alabama does have a better resume. They have a better resume than Ole Miss. They have a better strength of schedule than Ole Miss, who has 3 losses. A better one than South Carolina, and they beat South Carolina. Tulane is a group of 5 program, guys. Are you seriously going to sit up there and tell me that Alabama does not have a better strength of schedule than Tulane? Of course they do. Tulane's FPI strength of schedule is down at 100. Okay? And if you go based on the team rankings and the formula and things like that, Tulane is always in the 60 to 100 range, significantly worse than Alabama's. Iowa State Another 2-loss team. Again, you could complain about the Big 12 teams not getting enough love here. I can live with that, but Iowa State, again, has a very low strength of schedule based on the team rankings. Looking at that right now, they are number 32. Not bad. Significantly lower than Alabama's, though. So all these teams have 2 losses, and all of them, again, you can't really make a case for them over Alabama. And finally, UNLV, another group of 5 program. Do I need to spell that out for you guys? Of course, UNLV shouldn't be over them. So I'll ask you. I'm going to ask you. Who should be above Alabama? I'll ask the message board. You guys can complain all day about Alabama being number 13. I would like to know who should be above Alabama. Seriously. Somebody name somebody. I'll wait because you can't name anybody. You can't name anybody based on resume. Alabama's not number 13 because they're Alabama and they're trying to get a 3-loss team in. Alabama's number 13 because they have by far the toughest strength of schedule of any 3-loss team. Look it up. It's really not close, except for South Carolina. But guess what? Alabama beat South Carolina head-to-head. So, again, Alabama is easily the best 3-loss team. Your best case is that one of the 2-loss Big 12 teams or one of the 2-loss group of 5 teams should be ahead of Alabama. Do you really believe that, guys? Do you really believe that? Honestly. And you know what? I want to close out this poll question real quick. What is Tennessee's most likely first-round CFP game? Visiting Georgia, hosting SMU, hosting Indiana, another outcome. 22% say visiting Georgia, 38% say hosting SMU, 28% say hosting Indiana, 12% say another outcome. All right, so now let's come to this one. What do you make of Alabama's number 13 CFP ranking? We'll say too high, clear Bama bias, or no issue, who should be above them? Okay, so there we go. I'll go too high, clear Bama bias, no issue, who should be above them? And it's what do you make of Alabama's number 13 college football playoff ranking? That one's set to go right now. And guys, you can complain to me all day. This isn't about SEC bias. I want to be clear on this. I'm not out here saying that the SEC automatically gets you a 3-loss or 2-loss team or over a 1-loss team. So let's break this down for a minute. It's schedule strength. If Missouri, for instance, or even if Texas had a 3rd loss, if Texas had 3 losses, I would not put them ahead of BYU or Arizona State or Iowa State. Texas has not played a good schedule to this point. It's number 37. It'll go up once they play Texas A&M this week. I'll give them credit on that. And it'll probably be a top 25 range strength of schedule. But at this point, if Texas had 2 losses, I would absolutely put them above. I would put Iowa State, BYU, and Arizona State above them. I would. And honestly, I disagree with Iowa State and BYU being below Tulane. The point I'm trying to make is this. You can't arbitrarily complain about a team like Alabama, no matter how much you hate them being in a certain spot, unless you can make the case for who should be above them. And Alabama has a tougher strength of schedule than Ole Miss, a slightly tougher strength of schedule than South Carolina by every metric, and they beat South Carolina. And then there's 4 2-loss teams behind them. There's only 3 Power 5 2-loss teams behind them, Arizona State, Iowa State, and BYU. And right now, the Big 12 is going to be the 5th-ranked conference champion of that group. So we kind of think the Big 12 is very weak. So it's not about the SEC. It's about the weakness of the Big 12 more than anything. It's not like they put Alabama over Indiana, okay? And I wouldn't have a problem with them if they did. But you can't just go based on record. Because, again, no one's complaining about Georgia and Tennessee being ahead of Indiana and Boise State and SMU. And they should be. Tennessee and Georgia should be ahead of those teams. So I don't think it's right to complain about Alabama. I'm sorry. I don't. There is an Alabama bias here. You guys can't make the strong case. I'm going to dive into this a little further. First, the show is brought to you by Medicare Misty.
19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
All right, I am on the message board now I am on the message board now, and I am still trying to wonder from somebody who should be ahead of Alabama. Travis says every 2-loss team in the top 50 should be ahead of Alabama. Travis, why? Honestly, why? Is it just based on record? Are you talking about top 50 strength of schedule? Because if that's the case, should every 1-loss team be ahead of the 2-loss teams? You see where we're going here? Because if you're going to make it about the losses, then Tennessee should not be the number 8 team in the college football playoff. Zach asked, would they let a 2-loss Big Ten team host? Yes. If Ohio State loses this weekend, not only would they let them host, they should host. Ohio State drew the 3 toughest teams in the Big Ten this year based on the college football playoff rankings. I know they played a week out of conference schedule, but they drew Penn State, they drew Indiana, and they drew Oregon, and their only loss is by 1 point to Oregon. So, again, it's not about the conferences. It's about who you play, and you have to make sure you play a tough strength of schedule. Not tough, just a relatively decent one, okay? Fox Scroll says Penn State and Ohio State have trash schedules that would not hold up in the SEC. Fox Scroll, I think Ohio State does. I think Ohio State has a good schedule. Again, they played the 3 toughest teams in the Big Ten. If Ohio State lost another game, yes, they would host. Matter of fact, I'll just tell you guys this right now. If Ohio State, again, I'm just going to say it. If Ohio State loses to Michigan, I would drop them below Georgia, but I'd keep them ahead of Tennessee. I might keep them ahead of Tennessee. Now, that's a little bit debatable. You can go either way with that. If we're kind of just going straight by strength of schedule, Ohio State's is actually still lower than Tennessee's based on team rankings and the FPI and resumes and things like that. Their schedule strength is not that impressive when you really break it down, but I will say that it's only slightly below Tennessee's, and it's going to actually go up this week because Michigan is a higher ranked strength of schedule game than Vanderbilt. I don't know how. Both teams are 6-5, but I guess it's opponents and things like that. But Ohio State has quality wins to hang their hat on. Ohio State beat Penn State. Ohio State beat Indiana. Ohio State's only loss is by 1 to Oregon on the road. If they lose to Michigan this weekend, I'm still putting them in. I would still have them ahead of Tennessee, but I would have them below Georgia. So yeah, yes, a 2-loss Big Ten team would absolutely host. You guys are saying, again, you guys, I'm trying to ask you this question. This is not about Alabama being number 13. You guys are saying that you guys just want to blindly say that's representative of Alabama bias and talk about how they lost, wasn't even competitive against Oklahoma, Lance. I get your point. My question, again, is who should be ahead of them? And I want to go down the list again because I want to go who's directly behind them. Ole Miss is behind them. South Carolina is behind them. By every objective measure, Alabama has a tougher strength schedule than both of those teams. Now, South Carolina's will improve when they play Clemson this week and maybe above Alabama's. But Alabama and South Carolina both have 3 losses, and Alabama beat South Carolina. Ole Miss has 3 losses too, by the way. After that, you have 4 2-loss teams. Arizona State, Tulane, Iowa State, BYU. Are you honestly going to tell me that a 3-loss SEC team is not as good as a 2-loss Big 12 team or 2-loss Group of 5 team? Because if you believe that, then you shouldn't think that a 2-loss SEC team is better than a 1-loss Big 10 team or ACC team, at which point you should think that SMU and Indiana belong above Tennessee. So you got to just stay consistent on this now, okay? If you're consistent with your thoughts, then Alabama is absolutely where they belong to be. Now, the polls disagree with me. Our poll question disagrees with me because I said, what do you make of Alabama's number 13 CFP ranking? Too high, clear Bama bias is 56%. No issue, who should be above them is 44%. Sorry, guys. Alabama is where they need to be.